Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So we're obviously not in my shop today. We're at my buddy Ryan's place, Late Apex Motorsports, and he is a phenomenal powder coater, and today we're going to go through some of the process of powder coating. So he has all kinds of crazy cool equipment here, as well as his race bikes, and I think one of these might be a customer bike as well. But we're going to work on some Mark II parts today, get those coated, and you guys can see a little bit of the process there. So Ryan went ahead and did the Mark II's front subframe in this really slick satin black here, and in looking at it, it took pretty much 5 seconds to realize that having him blast it and coat it and do his thing on it was by far the correct decision, as opposed to me just rattle bombing it. So at the very beginning of the intro montage, you saw that I pulled the two valve covers off of the Mark II's new engine, and we're going to do these today, as well as the front sway bar. So the sway bar, hopefully you guys can hear me, is in his blast cabinet right here, and we'll blast off kind of the nasty old gritty surface on it and get it prepped for its beautiful new powder coat. So there's the man, the myth, the legend right there, ready to do some blasting, and we'll go ahead and get to it. So now that the sway bar is blasted, we're moving on to the masking portion now. So this is pretty easy, or at least pretty simple in terms of what will be masked. I'm going to have him mask kind of around the area of the holes, so that way both the fasteners that are going through as well as the bushings, we're not running into any issues with the coating causing any issues with those things fastening down correctly onto the sway bar. So other than just these two eyelets, the rest of it will all get blasted, and we're doing a gold color. Do you remember what the name of that color was that we chose for it?
So it's going to be Super Chrome Plus is the base coat, and then the anodized brass is going to be the top coat.
Yep. So this anodized brass, from what you had told me before, needs to go down on top of this base coat for the coating to be correct. So this super chrome will go down first, and then the anodized brass will go down on top of it. And what we're trying to do is mimic, to the best of our abilities, the appearance of a zinc coating with powder. And it won't be exactly the same color as zinc coating, but as long as it ends up as a gold to pay homage to what the sway bar originally looked like, I'll be perfectly happy. So the two valve covers have now been coated. They're over in the oven, and they're curing up, or they're melting out and flowing out, and those will be out of there in the next few minutes. So Ryan even took the time to put the attention to detail in place to actually clean off the ribs on the valve covers, which is what I was going to do back at my place. He just saved me a whole bunch of work doing it here, so big up to him for doing that. So the next thing to do will be the sway bar. And remember, the sway bar is a two-part coating system. So this Supra chrome will go down first, and then the anodized brass will go down on top of that. So, looks like 15 minutes of 375 for this, 10 minutes of 400 for this, and by the time all of that is said and done, we should have a nice brand new gold sway bar that will look really sweet. So, Ryan is getting the machine prepped to put the new powders through it, or the new powder I should say, and once that's done, I guess we'll take the sway bar in. We can get that coated up with the Super Chrome first layer, and then we can move on to the anodized brass after that. So the sway bar just came out of the oven, and we ran into some outgassing issues. So if you guys can see on the surface of the material, it looks like little bubbles were coming out of it, and that's because that's what was happening. So the metal can have gases and can have things that come out of it at elevated temperatures, and that's what we ran into here. So Ryan is going to strip this down and coat it again, put some outgas resistant primer onto it to hopefully solve that issue. So I won't end up taking the sway bar with me today, but at least we caught this now and he knows how to solve the issue, and we'll get that squared away moving forward. So we got some powder laid down on the valve covers, but just the aluminum itself, and bear in mind this is like 40-year-old aluminum that who knows what life it has lived. We're getting some divots and little pitting and stuff like that just due to the metal itself. So Ryan and I sat and talked about it for a minute and determined that this car is special enough to warrant stripping them down and making the surfaces perfect, so that way the valve covers come out perfect. And by no means is this anything that Ryan did or anything like that. It's purely just the metal itself and the flaws in it. So he's going to make these things look absolutely beautiful, and I'll leave them here with him so that way he can take his time. He can knock these things out and make them perfect, and I can't wait to see what he ends up doing. So I need to get out of here and get headed back out my way. So I'll leave these with him, and we'll leave the sway bar with him to get those knocked out, and whenever he gives me the call that I can come and pick the stuff up, make the trip out, pick them up, and then reassembly of the Mark II can begin. For the second half of this video, I'm sure many of you are able to tell at this point in time, but we are building a cup holder setup for the Mark IV. So this is kind of a little trinket project, but it's something that's been bouncing around in my head, and figured now is as good of a time as any to actually put it into practice. So I have here a handy Sprite bottle, and I measured the overall height of this as well as a can of soda, and I came up with these pieces here that are 3.5 inches tall, and you can see that they house a Sprite bottle or a 16-ounce bottle perfectly, and they also fit cans perfectly as well. So with these two base bodies now cut and prepped and everything else, I can go ahead and weld these together and then start figuring out the mounting base for them. After a little bit of welding, we have the base of the cup holder. And I went ahead and put these little accent welds around the top of each of the cup holder cylinders, and albeit not necessary, I thought it was kind of a cool little accent piece, just like a little bit of trim going around the tops of them, but actually in weld beads. So, not exactly sure how I like it just yet, but it's on there now, so I'll have to live with it. So the next thing I need to do is to come in, sand this little center section down, and then I can transfer this shape onto this piece of aluminum here. And I'm going to attempt to make the bottom piece all one piece. So it will incorporate both of these circles as well as the mounting tab that will come off of here, and then I can weld everything together and everything will be strong, and it should be more than sufficient to hold a couple of 16-ounce bottles of soda. Well, I'm almost done with the cup holder for the Supra, aside from a couple little triangulated gussets, just because I like to do things the complicated way. But I figured I'd take a moment here to show how I find the center hole, or the center point, to drill these little speed holes that you guys have seen me do a ton of times with different gussets here. So, on the back side of this piece here, you can see some leftover lines. And all that I do to do this is, for each of the three sides of the triangle, I find center, which you can see one of the center marks still right there on this portion of it. And then I go from one side to the corner on the opposite side, and I'll make a mark, make a mark, make a mark, and where those three lines intersect, that is your center point. So that's the quickest and easiest way that I've found to do it. I've used it on a ton of different things, and you can actually do this, or kind of marking center lines and so on and so forth, with a bunch of different shapes. So I did the same thing here for the three speed holes on the cup holder, did this on these triangular gussets here, and you can apply this logic to pretty much anything that you'd like. So at this point, I need to take and make little bends right where that mark is on the bottom of that triangle there, and that should kick this piece over to fill in that gap. And then I can weld all of this together, let it cool down. The cup holder will be ready for paint at that point, and once it's all painted and ready to go, it'll be ready to install in the car, and then I'll have a place to put my drinks while I'm driving. The Supra's new cup holder is all fabricated, all welded, and all painted now. And here is what we ended up with. So the paint is still a little bit soft, but just due to my own impatience, I'm going to go ahead and install it anyways. But here is the end product. So this is the lesser visible side, unfortunately, because I really like the way that this came out. Between the form of the actual base mounting plate and then the two gussets with these kind of beautiful little bends down towards the bottom, it came out in a different manner, but much better than I thought it was going to. And even the little accent welds along the top of each of the cup holders themselves, I still do like those, and I'm glad that I did that. And as with just about any part, everything looks really good with a coat of black paint on it. Inside of the car now, you can see right there is where the cup holder sits. So it uses, let me see if I can contort my arms around here. You can see those two bolts on the back side there. It uses two factory threaded holes in the chassis. I believe those were initially there to fasten part of the center console in place. Now, seeing that I don't run a factory center console in this, those two fasteners are free for the taking, and what better use for them than a cup holder. So I can take my Sprite bottle, and the Sprite is long gone, but this is what we started this portion of the video off with, and you can see that I can drop my bottle in right there. And with the funny car cage, it isn't the easiest thing in the world to get my hand onto, but when I'm driving, if I have my right hand up on the wheel or somewhere up in this vicinity, I can simply put my left hand underneath, grab my soda, quench my thirst, put it back in place, and the same kind of goes for the passenger. So it's convenient, it's out of the way, I'm not going to hit anything, any bottles or anything like that as I'm actually using this car, and I'm really happy with the way it came out and the form and everything else of it. And with the SEM trim black, it kind of blends into the rest of the interior here, and unless you're looking for it, you're kind of none the wiser that it's even there. So this cup holder assembly, it certainly isn't a part that adds any performance value to the car, but it's a creature comfort thing, and oftentimes little trinket parts like that can make or break the livability of a car like this. So it's obviously still a race car, but having cup holders now, as dumb as it sounds, it makes me much happier with the car. It makes me want to use it that much more. And the other thing as well is projects like this, they are a great exercise in imagination. So I kind of had a rough ballpark idea of how I wanted to implement and how I wanted to tackle the cup holder design. But until I actually got saw blades on aluminum and struck an arc and everything else, I didn't really know how it was going to come out, and I kind of just figured it out as I went along. And the end result, I couldn't be happier with it. So although it isn't something that makes the car faster, it makes me happier, and that's enough of a victory for me. So with the trip out to Ryan's shop and the cup holder build now in the books, I think that'll be about the end of this episode. So once Ryan gets the parts coated and gets all that stuff squared away, we will be full bore going ahead with the Mark II project, and we can finally start reassembly and start moving forward with it. And I know that that project has been one that kind of ends up always getting pushed on the back burner, but with me very rapidly running out of things to do on the Mark IV, the Mark II can now take my focus, and we can get that thing put back together and do some pretty special, pretty interesting and unique things with it. So I can't wait for that. and I can't wait to take you guys along on that journey with me. And within the next week or so, Thomas's car will be out of here and it will be replaced with yet another project. And I won't give any details out on it just yet, but it's one of my favorite cars from around here with one of my favorite people. And I can't wait to get going on it. And I can't wait to show you guys the car and take you guys along on that journey as well. But all of those things will be things in the future. And I'm done sweating and done playing around in the shop for today. And I'm also done with this video. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you guys as always for coming along on all these different journeys with me, on all these different projects, and all these things that I find interesting and that I have a lot of fun with. And I hope that you guys are still enjoying yourselves coming along on this journey with me. And I couldn't be happier to have you along. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you guys very much for taking the time to come on this trip with me, to live this life with me, and see what all we can get into here. And it's been a lot of fun from my perspective, and I look forward to doing it far into the future. But with all of that being said, and before I ramble on incessantly, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you all in the next episode.